I don't know exactly when it was that Postgres took over the hearts and minds of the Java community, but it certainly has. And I mean, can you blame anyone? It is relational, it is object oriented, it is lightweight, it is open source, it is infinitely scalable, and it's just pretty darn easy to use. And that's why I've put this tutorial together, because so many people in the Java community are using Postgres that they're constantly running into the same issues. It's like, where do you download the JDBC driver? What are the Maven or Gradle coordinates? What is the appropriate JDBC URL? And how do you do the basic CRUD operations? If you just give me a few minutes of your time, I'm going to go through all of those things. And I don't know, in just a few minutes, you're going to become very, very dangerous with this Postgres tool. Starting off with just creating a basic database that we can connect to in our Java applications. That is what we're going to do next. I don't like to waste anybody's time in these tutorials, but in order to connect to a Postgres database, we do have to have a Postgres database. I've got a tutorial on how to install Postgres. It's really simple and straightforward, so check that out if you need to install it. With it installed, the first thing we need to do is create a database to connect to. We'll create tables, we'll create records, we'll create rows, we'll do updates, but creating the database is something that we want to do inside the administrative tool for Postgres. And I'm just going to create a basic to-do database, click Save. That creates the basic database for me. Now, if I come in here, I open up schemas and I take a look at all of the different tables that are associated with this database, you're going to see that there's nothing in there. We're going to create our tables using JDBC, but in order to create tables with JDBC, we need the JDBC drivers and we need to figure out what the JDBC URL is, and that is what we're going to do next. To do JDBC with Postgres, you need that JDBC Postgres driver. The purpose of the driver is to take the language that the JVM speaks and the language that Postgres speaks and create an interpreter between them so SQL statements can go back and forth. It's not hard to download the PostgreSQL JDBC driver. In fact, just find it over on Maven Central MVN repository. I've got Postgres JDBC driver here. 42.7.4 is my favorite version because it doesn't have any of those red vulnerabilities in it. I'm going to click on the link. You can see the Gradle coordinates. I'm going to create a Maven project, so I'm going to copy those Maven coordinates, and then I'm going to head over into my IDE of choice and just create a Maven project. Now, you can use IntelliJ, you can use VS Code. I'm not rich, I can't afford them. I have to use the free and open source Eclipse, but hey, it works for me. I'm going to create a simple Maven project. com.mcnz.sql will be the group ID, and PostgreSQL example will be the artifact ID. I'll click finish, and then I'm going to dig into that Maven POM file. And when I go into that POM file, there's no dependencies in there. It is just a nice, simple Maven project. I'm going to add that dependencies tag, and then inside of that, I'm going to paste in the dependency that I copied from the Maven repository. Click Control-Shift-F to do a little format, and now those Postgres drivers get downloaded to my local system under my users profiles.m2 directory. And if you don't believe me, you just have to open up the Maven dependencies right there, and you'll see that PostgreSQL jar file. It's been downloaded to my local file system, and if you want to dig through and find the driver class, you're more than welcome to. Now, there is one other configuration change I'm just going to make to this project because it's something that sort of annoys me. But in these projects, right-click, build path, configure build path. The build path here is going to have the compiler set to Java 1.8. That just doesn't work for me. So I'm going to change that to 21. Click yes, click apply and close. And now with the knowledge that that Maven dependency, that the JDBC drivers are now on my local file system, I can move forward with creating some code that actually connects to the database, specifically using the PostgreSQL JDBC driver. And taking a look at that is exactly what we're going to do next. configuring the JDBC URL for Postgres is one of the places that most Jakarta EE, Spring Boot, and Java developers get messed up. So I just want to go over my configuration and show you how that applies to the JDBC URL we're going to configure in just a moment. I've got a database called to-do in my Postgres database, which is running on localhost port 5432. The schema is public, and you notice there's no tables there. What I want to do now is I want to use JDBC to create a table called tasks under that public schema. A lot of times where people mess up is they don't include the schema. It's not always necessary, but when it is necessary, if you don't have it, you're in a lot of trouble. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a brand new Java class. I'm going to put it in the com.mcnz.sql package. I'll call it the PostgreSQL example, and I'm going to have a main method. I'm going to get to the JDBC URL in just a moment. Don't you worry. The JDBC URL, I'm going to make it a static property. That's one of those properties that stick to your clothes when it comes out of the dryer. It'll be final. It'll be a string. It'll be called JDBC URL. And this is what it looks like. Of course, JDBC is the start. It could be ODBC, but why would it be ODBC? And from here, we want to indicate that it is PostgreSQL, not Postgres, but PostgreSQL. Make sure the whole thing is there. We need the localhost :5432, not 210 liftoff, but 5432. And then / the name of the database. So for me, that's the to-do database. I'm going to open this up a little bit because I'm going to need some more real estate. Now, I'm going to use a question mark, as you do with a typical URL. With some other database configurations, I've used semicolons, but those don't work as well with PostgreSQL. So you want the question mark there. And I'm going to say current schema equals public. Now, mine will work without that, but in some situations it's required. And the user, not username, is Postgres. It's got to be equals, not minus. Postgres. And the password, for me, it's equal to password. Don't tell anybody. Password equals password. Let me see. Can we fit that all on the screen right there? Static final string, JDBC URL equals, and I'm just going to go over this, make sure it's worked. JDBC PostgreSQL, localhost 5432 / to-do, question mark, current schema equals public, and user equals Postgres, not username, and password equals password. Okay, that is the JDBC URL. I think I'm going to remove the final decorator there just so that it all fits on the screen, right? It's a tutorial. We don't need it to be constant. We probably don't even need it to be static, but got to have some best practices here. Okay, so that's the URL. Let's prove that it works. In order to prove that it works, we need to connect to the database. So that means getting a connection, var connection equals driver manager dot get connection, and the connection is past that JDBC URL. And then I don't know, what else do we do after we've got a connection? We say var statement equals connection dot create statement. That gives us a statement object. And do you see that red X there? The red X, if you see red X, you need to get your eyes checked. So it's a white X on a red background, but that's just saying that need to throw the exception here. Okay, we could put it a try-catch block and be honest, but being honest is overrated. Okay, we've now got our statement object, and at this point, we can actually execute the query against the database. And what is the query? Well, that'll be the create table statement. And what is that create table statement equal to? Okay, this is it here. I'm not an SQL expert, so I just copy and pasted this, but create table task, ID serial, primary key. I don't know why I'm not specifying the data type there, integer, but I don't know, apparently I don't have to with PostgreSQL. And the name is going to be varchar. So we've got a table called tasks in our to-do list, and each task has a primary key. Its name is ID of the primary key, and every record has a name, and that's the thing that we have to do. That's our task, right? Learn Java, learn Mojo, master JDBC. Okay, and with that done, all we have to do is say statement.execute, pass in that SQL. Look at autocorrect trying to do me dirty here by passing in the JDBC statement. That is not what I want to do there. Okay, and that should create the table. I should be able to say system.out.println, table created, Control S, and I think that looks good. Now the question is, will it work? Will it run? So I'm going to say run as a Java application, keep my fingers crossed, and boom, it says table created. Now, of course, I'm from Missouri. I want to be shown, so I'm going to come over here, look under tables. There's nothing there. It didn't work. I just got to do a refresh. And there we are, that tasks table. And it looks like that task table. Well, it does specify that it is an integer in there. Name is character. So all of that stuff that I wrote got translated into proper PostgreSQL, SQL. But I have to say, I'm pretty happy with that. I've now got my JDBC URL configured. I'm able to connect to the database. I'm able to do a query, and boom, my JDBC application is working. Next thing to do, just get the CRUD operations going, and then we can put a fork in this thing and say our JDBC tutorial with PostgreSQL is done. But stick around for those CRUD operations. Okay, I'm doing just a very quick interruption here. A couple of things. You know, the YouTube algorithm hates me for some reason right now. If you're enjoying this video, if you could like, subscribe, and even leave a comment, I would really love to hear from you and find out if you've enjoyed this. It'll also help wake up the YouTube algorithm and maybe give my channel and my videos a little bit more exposure. So I would really appreciate that. The other thing too is I got a new copy of Hibernate Made Easy coming out, the best-selling book. I've updated it for version 7 of Hibernate. So if you're into JPA, Spring Data, Spring JDBC, please sign up for my mailing list. You don't have to buy it, but I'll be raffling off some free copies for members of my newsletter. And I'll also be making chapters available through the newsletter as well. So sign up for that. There's a link in the description. And finally, I helped out with some final edits on Darcy DeClute Scrum Master Certification Guide. So if you're agile and you're working with Scrum and you're interested in getting Scrum Master certified, a lot of people have been using this book to score 100% on the Product Owner and Scrum Master exam. So it's available on Amazon. Go pick that up. I know Darcy would be very happy if you did. Okay, that's it. I'm really sorry to bother you. Let's get back into the coding. Our JDBC drivers are working. Our JDBC URL for Postgres is working. We've got a basic create statement going in. Let's focus on some CRUD here. Now, before I do my CRUD operation, I'm going to just right click and refactor that code and say extract method, call it the create table method, and that's just going to move that code out of the main method here. And I'm actually going to comment out that reference to that code because we only need to create the table once. We don't need to keep creating it. And now I'm going to focus on doing an insert into the database. And instead of using the statement that you see on line 24 there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called a prepared statement. And the query looks a little bit different. The query looks like this. I'm going to say var insert SQL equals insert into tasks, because tasks is our database. And we want to create a new record. And our database only has 2 fields, the primary key, which will be auto-generated, and then the name of the task to do. Values, it's got to be plural, even though we're only working on one value right now. And I'm going to throw a question mark in there. And of course, when you do inserts in your code, you don't hard code the valued insert. You get the valued insert from a microservice or from a RESTful API call or for a form being submitted or from the user, right? So we don't hard code it in. We just do that. We create what's called a prepared statement, and we allow that question mark to be filled in at runtime. Now, I will hard code the filling in, but this is a better way to do SQL. And now, in order to get this prepared statement to work, we have to get a prepared statement object, prepared statement. So var prepared statement. We get that from the connection object. So prepare statement is the method call. And we have to pass it a string. And notice the IntelliSense has done me dirty there. They're trying to prepare a statement with that JDBC URL. That is not what we want to do. We want to use the insert SQL. And of course, that question mark, we got to update it with something, when the program runs. I'm going to hard code something and I'm going to say prepared statement dot set string and set that first string. Like you might have multiple strings because it's unusual to have a database with just one column in it, but this is just an example. And that first string is not going to be the JDBC URL. Maybe it'll be something like learn JDBC and PostgreSQL. I don't know, it's our first task to do. And then once you've set the string, you just say prepared statement dot execute. It does sound final, it does sound deadly. We are executioners here. And we can say system.out.println record created. Okay, and with that all looking handsome, I'm just going to right click and say run as a Java application. It now says record created, but you know where I'm from. I'm going to head into my Postgres database. I'm going to right click on tasks, and then I'm going to select view data, and I'm going to view the first 100 rows. I don't think there'll be 100 rows, but there should be at least one record there. And there you can see learn JDBC and PostgreSQL is inside my database. So there you go. Our create statement is working. I'm just going to tidy that up and say refactor extract method and call that create operation. Click OK, click save, and maybe I'm going to add something different here. Learn Spring, because this is going to run the next time we run our application too. But I think that's looking pretty handsome now. What's next? Maybe we'll take a look at the retrieve operation. The letter R in CRUD stands for retrieve. So the next thing we need to do is just retrieve some data from our database. And that's just going to be a little select SQL query. So I can say var select SQL equals select star from tasks. This should return all of the tasks to me. Now, this is a little bit different from just a regular statement execution because we're actually getting data back. We're not just saying, hey, run this command and do something about it. We're asking for something called a result set to come back to us. So in order to execute this SQL query, we've got to do a couple of things. So the first thing we need to do is get our statement object. So var statement equals connection.create statement. So that's all standard stuff. We've seen that before. But then what we do is we say var result set equals statement.execute query. It's not just execute, it's execute query. And we don't want that darn JDBC URL to be executed. We'll use it as we are creating that connection. But what we want to do is we want to execute that SQL query. Now that gives us a result set which holds all of the results from the database, which we can just loop through by saying while result set dot next. So go through each result set and then system.out.println and just println, geez, what is the code there? Well, result set dot, and then the name of the task is a string. So I'll say get string, and it's just name, right? That's the name of the column in the database. That's what you specify there. If we wanted to get the ID, we would say get string ID. Although if it's integer, we could probably say get integer, different data type. That now gives me the name of the stuff in the database, and it should print them out. It should print out a couple of things. It should print out, of course, learn JDBC and Postgres. As this runs again and we do the create operation, we're going to add in the record learn Spring. So we should actually see two things printed out if this runs properly. So let's give this a try. Run as a Java application. And now we do see it says learn JDBC in Postgres. It says learn Spring as well, because that's also been added to the database. And of course, if we come back over here and do a little run to make sure, indeed, we've got 2 records in the database. We got 2 records printed out from our retrieve operation. And let's just tighten that up and say refactor extract method, and we'll call it the retrieve operation. And with the code extracted in there, we're looking pretty good. Last couple of things to do are the update and delete, which actually follows the prepared statement and the regular statement syntax. So we'll be able to finish that in short order, and that is what we're going to do next. So I'm going to quickly just finish off the update and delete operations. We absolutely have to. And so I'm just going to say var update SQL is going to look something like this. I'll say, update the task table, update the tasks table, and set the name equal to, I don't know, question mark, I guess, is the way we want to do it if we're going to use a prepared statement. And we will do that anywhere it just says learn Spring. So where the name equals learn Spring, exclamation mark, we're going to update it to something else. Maybe we'll update it to Spring Boot. I'm just going to look at the database there. You can see it says learn Spring, exclamation mark, that second record. So we're going to update that to something. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to use this same syntax here from the prepared statement. There's nothing new going on here, right? We get the prepared statement from the connection object. It's the update SQL that we want. Instead of learn Spring, we want to say learn Spring Boot, and with 3 exclamation marks. And now that executes it, and we can say record updated, right? So it's just piggybacking off the code that we've already written. Just the only thing interesting here is really the change to the update statement. Now, again, every time we run our code, that create method runs. So I want to put something different in there. Say learn Mojo. That's the programming language that's set to replace Python. I got a number of tutorials over on the server side about that. So you should check that out if you're into AI at all. But there we go. That is the update operation. In theory, when this runs, that record where it says learn Spring should be changed to learn Spring Boot. So let's run this as a Java application. It looks like it did or did not. Oh, the update happens after the result set runs, after the retrieve. So I got to go to the database to see this, but I'll click play here. And there we go. The learn Spring record number 2 has been changed to learn Spring Boot. Okay, well, we got to finish this off, right? We got to be honest here. I'm going to take this code and refactor it and say extract method. And we'll call that the update operation. Okay, CRU. Wouldn't be honest if we didn't do the delete. And again, the delete is fairly straightforward. So it's var delete SQL. And the SQL is just delete from tasks. It's not even delete star from tasks. This will just delete every record in this database. And in this case, we actually just follow the syntax that we used earlier when we did the whole create table, right? So we just get the statement object, and then we just execute the statement. I probably don't even have to copy and paste. So var statement equals connection.create statement, statement dot execute, and pass in the string, not the JDBC URL. Man, doing me dirty all that time. And then we can say system.out.println. It was all deleted. Okay, there we go. And in theory, if I run this code, run as a Java application, it runs, it says it was all deleted, but you know where I'm from. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click play, and boom, all of those records are now deleted. So there you go. That is the whole thing. I'm going to tidy this up and say refactor extract method and delete operation, and boom, there we go. We were able to do everything with our PostgreSQL database, all CRUD operations, and I think that is a pretty awesome. Anyways, I got a bunch of tutorials on doing this with Spring. I've got a full JDBC tutorial on YouTube, and there's lots more information over at the server side. So if you want to learn more, join me over on the server side. Until next time.